Hi guys, so the Transport Secretary Grant Shapps was interviewed by Sophie Reid of Sky News, so let's hear what she had to say, and he had to respond with.
Firstly, I'd just like to get your reaction to our interview with Steve Baker. I'm not sure if you caught it, but he's effectively now the first Conservative MP to publicly call for Dominic Cummings to go. Is he right?
I didn't catch the interview there, but look, I think this comes down to somebody who was trying to do the best by their 4-year-old child who was in danger of having both parents ill, and so tried to position himself where there was some family support.
What are you talking about? When you are infected, you're supposed to self-isolate. You're not supposed to get in a car and travel over 200 miles to another location because you want to take your child there. You organize transportation for your child. You don't get in the car, but that's the whole point of this. Boris Johnson was telling people for weeks, stay at home. Stay at home. Maybe it was Dominic Cummins that actually came up with the slogan. And now Dominic Cummins broke the rules. He didn't stay at home. He got in the car. He drove for I don't know how many hours, and left his child in with his elderly parents, which were hundreds of miles away.
From younger members of that family who could drop off food and the like, and perfectly legitimate questions to ask about these things.
Yes, it's perfectly legitimate to ask about these things, but let's talk about something else.
Very straightforward answers have been forthcoming, and obviously I'd much rather speak to you about all the things we're doing in transport to build this country back after coronavirus, which is what I was hoping to talk to you about this morning.
Yes, somewhat derailed by news in the last couple of days.
I don't know how she does this, how she's not laughing at this stage. She even had a pun ready.
The point that Steve Baker was making on the childcare is that many of his constituents, many parents around the country have been grappling with exactly these concerns of what to do with childcare, how to look after their families when they fall ill, and that it will really stick in the throat to see what many people would assume to be one rule for them and one rule for the elite.
I think the most important thing about the guidance is it says if you are ill, make sure you self-isolate.
So if you're ill, self-isolate. Don't get in a car and drive 200 odd miles across the country with other people in the car to elderly people.
Stay in that location. And the guidance also says, you have to, to paraphrase, you have to look for common sense, practical solutions. Particularly, it refers to when you're looking after children.
Unless you're the chief advisor to the Prime Minister. So, if you're not the chief advisor to the Prime Minister, then you have to stay at home. Otherwise, you can go wherever the hell you want.
I mean, it's quite perfectly legitimate questions to ask. Dominic Cummings is very much in the public eye, but his child and wife much less so, and the child not at all, of course. And what they've done is gone to make sure that there's a support network around them. Obviously, both parents were.
What the hell are you talking about? The problem was that he did not self-isolate. That's what he was supposed to do. Now you're saying, well, he needed to have a support network around him, and he needed to get in his car and drive 200 odd miles across the country in order to have that support network. Are you telling me that Dominic Cummins doesn't know anyone in London? He doesn't have any friends? Well, I can't imagine anyone being his friend, but surely he has some sort of support network. He's the chief advisor to the Prime Minister. He's not some guy who works in a Starbucks who's just arrived 6 months ago.
Were concerned about being ill. I think the wife was already ill. So they've gone somewhere which was adjacent to, but not with, his parents, where both his sister and I believe a niece as well.
Yeah, let's just invent information so we can distract from the point that he broke the rules. He didn't self-isolate. He left where he was. He got in his car and he drove across the country. That's the main point here.
We're able to bring food and take that to the door and that sort of thing, meaning that if they were both ill, that the child was at least getting some support. So I think they took perfectly sensible, rational steps to...
How is that perfectly rational or sensible? So when somebody is infected, they should get in their car and drive across the country. That's perfectly reasonable, yes.
Try and make sure, as anybody would do as a parent, that they could look after their child. And that's basically the long and the short of this story.
That's all. Yeah, there's no real story here. Dominic Cummins is the chief advisor to the Prime Minister, and he broke the rules. He didn't stay at home, considering that Boris Johnson and Dominic Cummins probably came up with this slogan, stay at home, but they didn't do that. They broke that rule.
OK, so I'm keen to ask you just some very straightforward factual questions, just to work out exactly what has happened. So when exactly did Dominic Cummings first show symptoms of coronavirus? And
Sophie Ridge is on fire here. She's completely cool as a cucumber. But she must be laughing internally about this, because Grant Shapps has no idea what's going on. He probably didn't receive a memo saying, you make up something about Dominic Cummins. We have to defend Dominic Cummins. Here is the things you have to say. He didn't receive the memo, so he's doing it on the fly.
What date did he make that journey from London to Durham?
Yeah, I don't want to disappoint you. I'm Transport Secretary, so I'm expert in everything to do with building our infrastructure back, particularly in the post-corona world. So I don't know how all...
This is like watching an episode of The Onion or something. It's as if The Onion made this interview.
all the times and dates for you, but I understand that he will have travelled up there towards the end of March and stayed there, remained there for 14 days, didn't leave the property in isolation as...
But the problem was that he left London. Why did he leave London? Why didn't he stay where he was? Why didn't he stay at home?
Per the rules and the guidance.
OK, so that journey is 260 miles from London to Durham. That's 4.5 hours in a car with a small child and a sick wife. Did they stop at any point?
Well, you'll appreciate I wasn't with them, so I can't tell you exactly what the journey itself was like.
Maybe we could find out. Maybe there are people that Dominic Cummins came in contact with. Perhaps he stopped to take a pee. Maybe he stopped to get a snack for his child. Maybe he stopped to put petrol in his car. Maybe he went to a cash desk to pay for these things. Maybe he interacted with people. Maybe he said hello to some. Maybe he signed an autograph. I don't know if anyone would want his autograph. Maybe he got in contact with people. I think those people deserve to know that he was infected and that he was meeting with these people while he was infected and should have been staying at home.
But I do know that that Dominic Cummings, I saw a clip yesterday of him asking journalists to make sure they were spaced 2 meters apart. So I know
it was a bit late for that now, isn't it? So Dominic Cummins was meeting people while he was infected. Now that he's no longer infectious, he's saying, please respect the 2 meter distance. What the hell is going on? Is this some sort of, he's a transport secretary and this is a bloody train crash of an interview.
He's a stickler for those rules about, what to do to make sure you're following the 2 meter rule and the likes. I'm sure they took all the necessary precautions.
I'm sorry, guys, I'm laughing so much here, but this is just so ridiculous. Dominic Cummins is now saying, look, guys, you must respect the rules that I made up for you that I broke quite recently. You must respect those rules. I'm not going to respect them, but you better respect them.
But I'm afraid I don't have the detail of, I didn't sort of track, I haven't got the details of tracking of that journey.
I'll admit to being slightly disappointed that you don't have the detail, because we did flag these questions to you before you came on the show. A really unusual step for us, something that, you know, we've never really done before. But we acknowledge that you are Transport Secretary.
Well, this is completely different. You were told these are the questions you're going to be asked. And now he's acting as if, oh, this is all out of the blue and I didn't know what these questions were about. You know, I could understand if he was told, we're going to ask you about transport, and then the interview started, and then they changed it to, oh, now we're going to talk about Dominic Cummins. And he said, well, like, I don't know anything about Dominic Cummins. That would be somewhat reasonable, but these questions were flagged.
We put the questions out there on social media in the hope that you might be able to find out the answers to them. These are really important questions, very simple, factual questions, and you're now coming on the programme saying you don't know. Why not?
Well, yeah, I mean, you appreciate, Sophie. I came on the programme actually booked originally to talk about the transport announcements. I've absolutely, you know, perfectly legitimate to ask, you know, a whole range of questions, and questions have been asked about Mr. Cummings. Having said that, he's put out a statement, Downing Street's put out a statement, and they've been clear that he followed the guidance, that he did what we're all supposed to.
He said that he followed the guidance, but reality is different. The guidance was that you have to stay at home. If you're infected, you have to self-isolate. There's nothing in the guidance that says if you're infected, you're allowed to get in a car and drive 260 miles. Please point out where in the guidance it says you're permitted to get in a car or travel 260 miles across the country with other people to another person's home and spend time there. I'd like to see where it says that in the guidance.
Supposed to do if you were ill during this period, that particular period, lock down, remain in the same place, don't interact with other people. He did all of those things, looked up.
Where did he do all of those things? He got in a car with his wife and his child. That was the first red flag for me. He shouldn't have gotten in a car. Then he travelled across the country. Like, if he got in his car and moved from, I don't know, the driveway to his garage, well, that's not so much of a problem. But he drove 260 miles. He probably stopped along the way to put petrol in his car, or take his child to the bathroom, or for him to go to the bathroom, or for a snack, or for whatever. So he probably interacted with people. Don't these people deserve to know this? Don't they deserve to know that Dominic Cummins was infected at the time and he interacted with those people? Don't they deserve to be tested and be informed at least? No, it's all hidden.
After his young child, I'm afraid I don't have detail to the point of time, you know, what time of day and how many stops. Sorry, I didn't hear.
He didn't stay in the same place. The household is supposed to stay in the same place if you have coronavirus. His wife was showing symptoms of coronavirus at the time, and he didn't stay in the same place.
Well, I mean, he did once they, you know, were locked down. They sort of hunkered down and they stayed there for 14 days. And
but they didn't stay in one place. They travelled across the country. I understand that you have to defend Dominic Cummins no matter what, but why aren't you just honest and say, look, I think what he did was wrong, and I hope that whatever action is taken will be legitimate. That's all you'd have to say if you want to cover your own arse. You say, look, I think it was probably the wrong thing to do. I don't have any more details about it. But if you'd like to talk about something else, let's talk about something else. But he's trying to justify something, but he's not capable of justifying it because logically in his mind, he knows Dominic Cummins broke the rules. He was meant to stay at home, and he didn't stay at home. It's very simple.
And
yeah, that's after they travelled 260 miles.
Well, everyone has to sort of, you know, if you're going to lock down, you go to the place you're going to stay. And
but he was at home at the time. Like, there's nothing in the guidelines that say you can choose wherever you want to lock down. Like I could say, well, I'm going to lock down in Las Vegas. So I'm going to go to Las Vegas and lock down there. Or I'm going to go to New York City and lock down. Or I'm going to go to Edinburgh Castle a lockdown, or I'm going to go to Downing Street. I'm going to go to Downing Street and lock down in Downing Street. Can I do that?
As I say, the guidance is clear that, particularly where young children are involved, it says that it actually refers to children specifically, and it says, this isn't a sort of perfect science. Essentially, the guidance says you'll want to take the steps which are practical to be able to look after your children.
Yeah, but where does it say that you are allowed to take your children 260 miles? Practical would be, okay, we have to stay in our home. I need to feed my children, so I order takeaway. I order food to be delivered. I ask someone to take the food in a box and leave it on the front doorstep. I can't take my children to school, so they study via Skype or via Zoom or something like this. That's the practical aspect of it. There's nothing in it that says, well, if you're feeling down, you can get in your car and drive across the country.
Or child in this particular case, which in their case meant having, a sister or a niece who could drop off food, and that's what.
And why couldn't they do it at Dominic Cummins' home in London? Why was it that he had to go across the country first and then they would drop off food and supplies to him?
They didn't. They then remained in that space. And I think there were more stories today I was seeing about, has he travelled backwards and forwards, accusations that he then went back up to Durham again further times. I understand completely untrue when he came.
So it's we know it's a fact that he went to Durham, 260 miles. And now he's trying to say, well, there are other stories that he returned to London and then went back to Durham. Well, that's fake. That's fake news. That's not true. So let's dismiss the entire story, including the facts, because there may have been other things that are not true or we're not sure about.
Came back to London, which was on the 14th of April, I see. He's remained in London since and hasn't been back to...
Oh, okay, so now that he has returned from Durham... So he didn't even self-isolate in Durham. So he broke the rules in London by going to Durham, then he broke the rules in Durham by returning to London. Why didn't he stay in Durham until he was completely tested and proven to be negative?
Durham, so that there's lots of things being said here which is completely untrue. Actually,
you're saying a lot of things are being said. You have no understanding of what's true or false, but you're saying that, well, there's a lot of things that are true and some things are false. Well, most of it is false. So let's just change the subject because I don't know what the hell to say. I know he did wrong, but I have to defend him come what may.
The basic story is actually pretty straightforward. Husband and wife are ill. They hunker down. They look after their 4-year-old.
And yeah, it's quite simple if you ignore the fact that they got in their car and travelled 260 miles.
And they don't move until they're better. And coming back down to London afterwards would have been travelling for essential work, which was always allowed to do as well.
OK, so just to be crystal clear, because this is important, you're effectively saying that the two new allegations, the first that Mr Cummings travelled back up to Durham on the 19th of April, and the second is that he was seen by a witness, apparently, in Barnard Castle, 30 miles from Durham, on the 12th of April. You're going on the record to say that both of those allegations are not true. So
what a train wreck of an interview. I think we just have to accept that Dominic Cummins broke the rules and he's not going to be punished for it. Boris Johnson has decided that he has not broken the rules, or he has decided that, well, he broke the rules but that was legitimate. This is just a charade, and I don't know what else to say. Let me know in the comments, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks. Why not become a Patreon and enjoy access to our Discord server where we share news, chat, and have some fun. If you become a patron, you can also make video suggestions on topics that are important to you. Check it out via the link in the description.